New Hubble images reveal what's inside 3I Atlas, and it changes everything. 18 hours ago, the Hubble Space Telescope captured something that rewrites our understanding of what 3I Atlas is. The object opened, not cracked, not fractured from stress, opened. A section of the nucleus measuring 380 meters across separated along geometrically precise seams and moved outward, revealing an interior structure that bears no resemblance to any natural formation we've ever observed. Inside Atlas is not ice and rock. It's compartmentalized architecture with reflective surfaces, regular geometry, and what appears to be deliberate internal organization. That's not geology. That's engineering exposed. We have studied the internal structure of asteroids and comets for 40 years using seismic data, density measurements, and impact crater analysis. Natural bodies are chaotic inside. Random aggregations of material compressed over millions of years. No patterns, no organization. Just rubble and ice mixed together. What Hubble photographed inside Atlas shows order, repeating structures, surfaces that reflect light at specific angles, chambers separated by walls. This is not how planets form, this is how spacecraft are built. Before I show you the interior geometry that 3 independent image analysis teams confirmed, before I explain why the opening mechanism violates everything we know about material stress and failure, before I reveal what the spectroscopic signatures from inside tell us about Atlas's composition, I need you to understand what opening means for a solid object in space. Natural bodies don't have panels that separate cleanly. They don't have seams. They don't have moving sections that deploy on command. When objects break in space, they shatter. They fracture along random stress lines. They don't open like doors revealing organized interiors. In the comments below, tell me this. When you see a 380-meter section of an interstellar object separate along perfect geometric boundaries and expose compartmentalized internal structure, what's the simpler explanation? Natural fragmentation that coincidentally looks designed, or actual design? Because one requires physics we don't have, and the other requires accepting what the images show. Let me start with the opening event itself and why it's mechanically impossible for natural processes. The event began at 2247 UTC on February 3rd. Hubble was conducting a routine monitoring observation of Atlas as part of the extended observation campaign I requested. The imaging sequence covered wavelengths from ultraviolet to near-infrared over a 3-hour period with exposures every 12 minutes. At 2247, the first indication of change appeared, a brightness increase on one face of the octahedral nucleus. Initially, analysis teams thought this was outgassing, gas and dust erupting from the surface as commonly happens with active comets. But the brightness pattern was wrong. It wasn't a diffuse cloud spreading outward. It was a line, a sharp, linear feature, approximately 380 meters long, running parallel to one edge of the octahedral face. 12 minutes later, the next image showed the line had widened. What appeared as a bright line was actually a gap, a separation between two sections of the surface. The gap measured approximately 4 meters wide and was growing. By the third image, 24 minutes after the initial detection, the gap had widened to 15 meters. And critically, the separated section wasn't breaking off randomly. It was moving in a controlled way, rotating outward along one edge, like a hatch opening on hinges. By the end of the 3-hour observation sequence, the section had rotated outward by approximately 47 degrees from its original position. It remained attached at one edge, the apparent hinge line, while the opposite edge had moved 127 meters away from the main body. The movement was smooth, continuous, controlled, and it exposed the interior. What Hubble photographed inside Atlas is unlike anything seen in natural small bodies. The interior surface exposed by the opening is not rough ice and rock. It's smooth, reflective. The spectroscopic signature shows absorption features consistent with metals, specifically aluminum or titanium alloys based on the reflection spectrum. But the smoking gun is the geometry. The interior is compartmentalized. Visible in the high-resolution images are what appear to be walls or partitions dividing the internal space into sections. These walls run at angles consistent with the octahedral external geometry, suggesting the internal structure mirrors the external form. This is radial architecture, like segments of an orange or chambers in a nautilus shell, except this is artificial, designed, built. Let me walk you through the geometric analysis because precision matters. The open panel measures 380 meters by 290 meters, forming an irregular quadrilateral that exactly fits one portion of the triangular octahedral face. The edges of this panel align with surface features we'd previously identified as ridges in the Webb images. Those ridges weren't natural formations, they were seams, panel boundaries, structural joints designed to allow sections to separate when needed. The hinge line, the edge along which the panel remains attached, shows a different spectroscopic signature than the surrounding surface. It's darker, less reflective, and shows absorption features consistent with polymer compounds or carbon-based materials. This suggests a flexible material, something that can bend without breaking. Natural rock doesn't have flexible hinge zones. Engineered structures do. We use hinges on spacecraft panels, solar arrays, and antenna booms. Atlas has a 380-meter hinge. Now let me address the mechanism, because opening this panel requires force and control. The panel has mass. Based on volume estimates, assuming average density, the panel masses approximately 50 million kilograms. To rotate 50 million kilograms outward by 47 degrees over 3 hours requires torque. Torque requires force applied at a distance from the rotation axis. I calculated the energy requirements. Assuming the hinge is at one edge and the center of mass is approximately 190 meters from that edge, rotating the panel by 47 degrees requires changing its rotational position, which requires work against inertia and any resistance from the hinge mechanism. The energy required is on the order of 10-12 joules. 1 terajoule. That's the energy equivalent of 240 tons of TNT. Where did that energy come from? If it was released explosively, we'd see debris. We don't. If it was from outgassing pressure, we'd see gas plumes escaping from the hinge area providing thrust. We don't. If it was from mechanical actuators, motors, or hydraulic systems, we'd see heat from the friction and electrical resistance. We don't. The panel opens smoothly with no detectable energy signature. This is powered motion with a hidden energy source. Let me describe what's visible in the interior because every detail contradicts natural formation. The compartments visible through the opening appear as darker regions separated by brighter lines. The brighter lines are the walls I mentioned. They're reflective, catching sunlight, and appearing brighter than the shadowed interior spaces. The geometry of these walls suggests they're not randomly oriented. They meet at angles, specifically angles that are multiples of 30 degrees. 30-degree angles, 60-degree angles, 90-degree angles. These are the angles you get when you divide circles and spheres into regular geometric sections. These are design angles. Architecture angles. You don't get these angles from random ice aggregation or rubble pile collapse. You get them from deliberate construction following geometric principles. The compartments themselves show structure. In the highest resolution Hubble images, magnified and processed to enhance contrast, you can see features inside some compartments. Linear elements. What might be struts or support beams? What might be equipment or instruments? The resolution isn't sufficient to definitively identify objects, but the fact that there are objects, distinct features with regular shapes inside a supposedly natural asteroid is proof enough. Now let me discuss the spectroscopic data from the interior because it's as anomalous as the geometry. Hubble's spectroscopic instruments captured reflected sunlight from the exposed interior surfaces. The spectrum shows strong reflection in blue and ultraviolet wavelengths, weak absorption in the red and infrared. This is characteristic of metallic surfaces. Polished metals reflect blue light efficiently while absorbing longer wavelengths. The specific absorption features match laboratory spectra of aluminum alloys. Not pure aluminum, but aluminum mixed with other metals like magnesium, silicon, or copper. These are aerospace alloys, the same materials we use in aircraft and spacecraft construction because they're strong, light, and resistant to corrosion. They don't occur naturally in space. You have to refine them from ore, smelt them, alloy them, process them into structural materials. But here's the problem that makes natural origin impossible. Aluminum is the third most abundant element in the solar system after hydrogen and helium, but it's never found in pure metallic form naturally. It's always bound in minerals, specifically aluminum oxides and silicates. To get metallic aluminum, you need to extract it from bauxite ore using the Hall-Héroult process, which requires temperatures around 1000 degrees Celsius and massive amounts of electrical energy. Atlas is showing us metallic aluminum in space, formed into structural panels, organized into compartments. This requires industrial processing, mining, refining, manufacturing. You don't get this from a cloud of dust and ice collapsing under gravity. You get this from a civilization with metallurgy, power generation, and construction capability. Let me address why the panel opened now. What triggered it? There are several possibilities. First, program timing. If Atlas is an automated probe, it might have a mission timeline. Arrive at target system. Establish orbit. Configure for observation. Deploy subsystems. Open access panels. Each step triggered by elapsed time or orbital position. If opening was programmed to occur at a specific point, we're witnessing execution of code written centuries ago. Second, response to conditions. Maybe Atlas monitors its environment and responds to specific conditions. Temperature, radiation levels, proximity to Earth. If it detected that conditions were favorable for the next mission phase, it might have autonomously decided to open. This would be adaptive behavior, decision-making based on sensor input. Third, external command. Maybe something communicated with Atlas and told it to open. The 6 deployed secondary objects are in formation around Atlas. Maybe they transmitted a signal. Maybe something else we haven't detected sent a command. Or maybe Atlas received instructions from its origin system. The round-trip light time to HD 3651 is 72 years. If Atlas sent data when it arrived and received a response, the timing could work for a command to have been sent decades ago that's just now being executed. All 3 possibilities point to the same conclusion. Opening is deliberate, controlled, part of a plan. Natural objects don't wait for the right moment to fracture. They don't respond to commands. They don't execute mission timelines. Atlas does all of this. Now, let me connect the interior structure to the external behaviors. We know Atlas has internal heat sources. The Webb thermal imaging showed vertex domes 5 degrees warmer than average surface temperature. We know it maintains precise rotation synchronization with Earth. We know it deployed 6 objects into hexagonal formation. All of this requires power, control systems, and functional components. The interior revealed by the opening shows where those components might be housed. The compartments could contain power generation systems. The metallic walls could be heat sinks or radiation shielding. The structural elements could be support frameworks for instruments or propulsion units. What we're seeing is the guts of a spacecraft, the functional internals that make everything else possible. The compartmentalized design makes engineering sense. You don't build a spacecraft as one solid block. You divide it into sections: power section, propulsion section, payload section, communication section, life support if there's crew. Each section is isolated so failures don't cascade. If one compartment is damaged, the others remain functional. This is fault-tolerant design. This is how we build spacecraft that need to survive for centuries in the harsh environment of space. Let me preempt the natural explanations because they're inadequate. Maybe what we're seeing is natural layering in the ice, like sedimentary rock on Earth. Sedimentary layers are horizontal, formed by material settling under gravity. The structures inside Atlas are vertical and angled. They're walls, not layers, and they're metal, not ice. Maybe it's crystalline structure, like minerals that grow in geometric patterns. Crystals grow at microscopic scales. The largest natural crystals on Earth are a few meters. You don't get 380-meter crystalline panels that open on hinges, and crystals are brittle. They fracture under stress. They don't have flexible hinge zones that allow controlled rotation. Maybe it's impact fracturing, cracks from ancient collisions that happen to look organized. Impact fractures radiate from impact points. They're chaotic, branching, irregular. They don't form compartments with 30-degree angle walls. They don't create panels that separate along clean seams and rotate outward smoothly. Impact damage destroys organization. It doesn't create it. Every natural explanation fails when confronted with the details. The geometry, the materials, the controlled motion, the compartmentalization, the precision. You need multiple miracles of coincidence to explain this naturally. Or you need one engineering team building a spacecraft. Occam's razor says choose the simpler explanation. The institutional response has been denial and delay. NASA issued a statement acknowledging structural changes observed in 3I Atlas, but describing them as surface modification due to thermal stress. Thermal stress doesn't create 380-meter hinged panels. The European Space Agency called it unexpected fragmentation behavior. Fragmentation is violent and chaotic. What we observed is controlled and smooth. I've spoken with planetary scientists who've seen the images. Privately, they're stunned. They have no natural explanation. On the record, they say further analysis needed. This is career protection. Admitting that an interstellar object is artificial is career suicide in fields that have spent decades dismissing extraterrestrial intelligence as fringe speculation. But the data doesn't care about careers. Now let me make predictions that can be tested. First, the panel will continue opening. If this is a deployment sequence, the panel might rotate fully outward to 90 degrees or more. We should monitor Atlas continuously. If the panel movement continues over coming days, That's evidence of ongoing controlled operation. Second, additional panels might open. If one section can separate, others can too. The octahedral geometry has 8 faces. If each face has deployable panels, we might see 7 more opening events. Each would expose more interior. Each would provide more data about internal architecture. Third, the interior compartments might show activity. Once exposed to sunlight and space, systems inside might activate. We might see temperature changes as equipment warms up. We might see spectroscopic changes as materials outgas. We might see movement as mechanisms deploy. The interior is no longer sealed. Whatever is inside can now interact with the environment. Fourth, the opening might enable communication. If Atlas has been silent because its communication systems were enclosed, opening the hull might expose antennas or transmitters. We should monitor for new electromagnetic emissions from Atlas, particularly from the open section. If signals appear, they're likely intentional communication attempts. I also predict that higher resolution imaging will reveal even more structure. Hubble is at its resolution limit for this target. The James Webb Space Telescope should observe the open section. Webb's infrared sensitivity and higher resolution would show details invisible to Hubble. I predict Webb will see clear mechanical structures, fabricated components, things that are unambiguously artificial. Let me address what this opening means for first contact scenarios. If Atlas is a probe, and if it's opening to reveal internal systems, this might be preparation for the next mission phase. Observation might be transitioning to interaction. Passive monitoring might be shifting to active engagement. The opening could be Atlas preparing to do something we haven't seen yet. What that something is, we don't know. Deploy more objects, transmit data, receive instructions, reconfigure for a different purpose. All of these are possible. All of these would represent escalation from what we've observed so far, and none of them have precedent in human experience. The interior images also raise questions about who built this and when. The manufacturing precision visible in the compartment walls suggests advanced materials, science, and construction techniques. The scale of the structure, hundreds of meters, suggests significant industrial capacity. You don't build something this large in a garage. You need facilities, resources, energy, and time. If Atlas was built centuries ago and launched toward Earth, the civilization that built it had spaceflight capability in the 1500s by our calendar. While Europe was exploring the New World with wooden ships, someone 47 light-years away was building interstellar probes with aluminum alloy hulls and compartmentalized interiors. The technological disparity is humbling. That civilization might still exist, more advanced now than they were then, or they might be extinct. Atlas, the only remaining evidence they ever existed. Either possibility is profound. If they exist, we're being observed by something far more capable than us. If they're gone, we're looking at archaeology on an interstellar scale. The opening changes the calculus of how we respond. When Atlas was closed, we could observe and speculate. Now it's open. Now we can see inside. Now we have direct visual evidence of artificial structure. The debate about Atlas's origin is over. It's manufactured. The question now is what we do with that knowledge. I'm calling for immediate international scientific collaboration to study the interior. We need imaging campaigns using every available space telescope. We need spectroscopic analysis of every visible surface inside Atlas. We need thermal mapping to see if the interior is heating up or changing temperature. We need radar to probe deeper into the structure and map compartments we can't see optically. We also need to consider safety implications. An object in Earth orbit that's opening to reveal unknown internal systems is a potential threat. Not necessarily hostile, but unknown equals risk. Military and space agencies need to monitor Atlas for any deployments or activities that could affect Earth's orbital environment or pose danger to satellites or space stations. But we also need restraint. Responding to unknown technology with aggression or preemptive strikes would be catastrophic. If Atlas is monitoring us, and if our response to its opening is violence, we send a message about who we are as a species. We'd fail whatever test we're being given. We need to respond with curiosity, caution, and measured scientific investigation. The images Hubble captured will be analyzed for years. Every pixel contains information. Every reflection tells us about materials. Every shadow reveals geometry. This is the most detailed look we've ever had at potential alien technology. It's physical, it's measurable, it's right here in our solar system, accessible to our instruments. What we learn from Atlas could transform human civilization. Even if we can't understand how the technology works, seeing that it works expands what we know is possible. If we can understand any part of it, the applications could revolutionize engineering, materials, science, propulsion, power generation. This is reverse engineering opportunity on a scale we've never had. But there's also risk that we're not ready. If Atlas's opening is preparation for something, and if that something is beyond our ability to respond to or defend against, we're vulnerable. Transparency is critical. Governments and space agencies need to share information openly. If Atlas poses threat, the world needs to know and prepare collectively. Opening is confirmed. The interior is visible. The compartments are real. 3I. Atlas just revealed what it is. Not a rock, not ice, not a natural formation. A spacecraft, built by someone. Close quote. Sent here centuries ago. Now opening to expose systems we're only beginning to comprehend. Demand full disclosure of all imaging data. Demand that institutions acknowledge what we're seeing. Demand that humanity responds as a unified species to the most important discovery in our history. The hull is open. The interior is exposed. And what's inside changes everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. Stay rational, stay vigilant. And remember that when something built by alien intelligence opens in Earth orbit, what happens next will define us.